Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Banquet Hall podcast. It has been a minute, but we are back. I'm blessed to be joined today with one of the little homies, a little bro, Derek. Derek, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. I can't complain. Excited to be here. Um, so yeah,
Awesome. Well, definitely looking forward to our conversation. Right before we started recording, I told Derek he's the first guest to be in the new podcast studio, the new apartment. Listeners who know me well know that I recently transitioned jobs, recently moved. So, living out in the Inland Empire now, which means new podcast space with plenty of space for propaganda because I knew Derek was going to come with something Warriors on. So, had to have my D-Lo jersey in the back. Dodgers play today too, so got to show some love for the hometown teams. We're gonna get into the sports corner a little bit later because I got some things to say about Derek's favorite basketball team, but I gotta save that. Gotta save that for later on in the podcast. But I usually start these episodes out with a random icebreaker question just to get the juices flowing. And to be quite honest with you, I forgot that I do that, so I did not think of one. So off the top of my head, the question I'm going to ask you is, let's see, if you we'll stick with the sports since I opened talking about sports. If you had to pick your top three favorite Lakers of all time, because I know you're not a Lakers fan, I got to get you to show some love to the Lakers on the podcast. I'll pick my top three favorite Warriors, but what are your top three favorite Lakers of all time?
um,
No order.
yeah, for sure. I definitely got to go Shaq. Um, I mean, growing up in basketball, I was always big, so I had to play and learn how to. I guess as I got older, learn how to use my body more and not be
Mm-hmm.
afraid to do that to gain an advantage. So definitely Shaq. Um, Bean, Kobe Bryant, of course. Um, just the dedication he had to the game and how he approached every moment, um, from early practices, late practices, it didn't matter. And then I think it was cool getting to see him step into the father role a bit more, coaching Gigi. Rest in peace to them. Um, it's actually crazy, man. He passed away on my birthday.
Oh wow,
Yeah, wild
damn.
for real. Um, and it's wild. So it's about to be 4 years, and I'm about to enter my Kobe year.
Oh yeah, so it's gonna be Kobe year for you, dang.
So,
I know that adds like a little bit more sentiment to it when you say Kobe year, excuse me, knowing what happened on that day. And yeah, rest in peace to the Mamba.
rest in peace. And third, I do want to go Magic. Um, Obviously, there's a whole bunch of debate around the league and around NBA fans of is Magic or Steph the best point guard ever. Um, I love those debates. Obviously, Magic had a great body of work and brought championships to your franchise. So, and did it was passing like that. What was he, 6'9"?
Yeah, he was 6'9".
Yeah, so that's undeniable. Um, I do love Steph. It's been a privilege to watch him as I've grown up. It's crazy that it's year 16 for him and he was just the
Yes,
babyface assassin.
time flies. I'm gonna put you on the
Time
spot though.
flies.
Who's the greatest point guard of all time? Is it Magic? Is it Steph? What's your take?
I'm gonna go Steph, and here's
Ooh,
why.
okay, let's hear it.
When obviously people like to bring up the debate that Steph is not a traditional point guard.
Yep.
Um, he's more of a hybrid or two guard, since he plays off the ball so much and specializes in shooting. Um, I will say, yes, he specializes in shooting. Um, but that's not the only part of his game, and I think other parts of his game get overlooked, because he is so good at shooting. People call him the greatest shooter ever, which obviously, but um, his his gravity means a lot because he's able to shoot the ball.
Mm,
And I think it was one thing in like 2016 through the like 19 when our offense was more new to the NBA and the NBA had to kind of catch up to the system that we were running. It's been interesting to see the flip side of that in these last few years where our offense is kind of stagnant. It can be. And if Steph is not producing the way we know he can, we've had troubles.
yeah.
But his gravity means something because I don't get too far into the whole Steph KD because I appreciate KD for coming and um pause bringing all that he brought to our franchise, 2 championships. I can't deny that. Um, but I do think it was easier for him to play because of Steph's gravity.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, even in these last couple years where um we haven't been as good, I'm glad that we still have had Steph specifically because that gravity has opened up uh space for other players to play. It does feel really different now than it did in like 2016, 17. Like our bench
yeah.
was very different when Sean Livingston and all those guys, David West, guys that knew their roles and were going to perform their roles on a nightly basis. And so when you got younger guys trying to figure it out, still trying to establish their identity, I have appreciated the way Steph has been able to transition through that and still be himself.
See, I could tell you about to be a basketball coach because that was a very analytical way to defend your point. I don't know if I can say that Steph's greater than Magic because I'm an old head at heart, and Lakers always got to get the nudge over non-Lakers. I have to because right
I
when I think of
respect
the
it.
when I think of the question, though, I do think of which your first point was with regards to Steph, like greatest point guard of all time. I just have to go with Magic just by how he controlled the Showtime Lakers. If I were to rank my favorite players or the greatest players of all time, I'd probably have Steph higher than Magic. But I think as a point guard controlling the game, like I think you got to have Magic up at top. But I love Steph and leading to the quick top three Warriors because I don't want to lose the guests who don't know nothing about basketball. Steph Curry, obviously, like that's greatest Warrior of all time. Steffordless. Like as much as I love to hate on the Warriors and Bay Area fans, like watching Steph play basketball is like art. Like I'm not going to make the same mistake I made with LeBron because I was a LeBron hater in high school. I'm not hating on Steph Curry. I love watching Steph play basketball. Um, then I got to go Clay. I was hurt that he went to the Mavericks and not the Lakers. I was like, you either got to stay a Warrior, you got to come to LA. You can't leave California and go to Dallas. And I know that's a pain in the chest for the Warriors fans, but I love Klay
Man,
Thompson. Um,
seeing him in that Mavs uniform is not nice. I don't like it. And then number 31, it's like, damn, man.
yeah, it's nasty. It's nasty. It's very nasty. So I feel for y'all because that's not right. That shouldn't be the case. And then number three, as much as I love Draymond, number three, I'm gonna go Baron Davis. I'm gonna throw back to the We Believe Warriors. I gotta show
We
some love to the We
believe.
Believe Warriors. But there's a lot of I just love hoops. I could have mentioned Leandro Barbosa, Matt Barnes. Like there's a lot of players who have played for the Warriors that I'm really big fans of. But like I
Yeah,
said, don't want to
the
alienate the list.
Brazilian blur.
The Brazilian blur. That's how you know you're a hoops head. I don't want to alienate the listeners that don't watch sports though. So let's go ahead and get into Derek's story real quick. So the real first question of the podcast, Derek, if the listeners couldn't guess, where are you from and how did that shape who you have become as a person?
Man, I am from Oakland, California. I gotta represent because I feel like Oakland gets a bad rep sometimes. I've even experienced it with a bunch of people being down at UCSD. But it means something to me to have grown up here and still have the privilege of being here amidst gentrification and all that's going on. Um, yeah, And it means something to me because of how my family story just worked out. My grandma was a single mother of five and moved her family here from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in 1975. And so, um, my family's been here and has seen a lot of change over the years. And my mom and I are the only family that still live in Oakland. So, that definitely means something to me. And it's sad to see some of the changes the city has made. Um, or has gone through over the years. We went from three sports teams to none in a matter of like 5, 6 years, which is crazy,
Scandalous.
scandalous. But you know how politics get into everything. It's like it's really unfortunate, but I do want to highlight that um although there's a lot going on in Oakland, there are many people still thriving, a lot of culture still being created. Um a lot of dedicated fans still out here representing. I'll never call them the Las Vegas Raiders. They are my Raiders. I will never wear gear that says Las Vegas. But um, yeah, it's been a blessing to grow up here and really be around all types of people from a young age and getting to navigate different spaces and um, all the culture here from the Black Panthers to like a lot of musical artists. Goapele, love Goapele. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot that Oakland has to offer, and that's why I specifically say Oakland. The Bay Area has become like such a popular term, and
Mhm.
people like to. But there's a lot of different stuff in the Bay. Like Oakland is so different from San Francisco. I live it right on this side of the bridge, and they're just 7 miles away, but it's very different cultures. Um, and so I think it's important for me to say Oakland, specifically.
No, I think that's right on the nose because one thing, no matter how much I give y'all mess for y'all sports teams, one thing I would never take away from anyone from the Bay Area is that love you have for where you're from. Because I feel like it's, and I've said this on the podcast before, but I feel like when I came to college and I would meet people, not everybody was very like proud of where they're from for one reason or the other, but I asked some people, like, "Oh, where are you from?" LA. I'm like, "Oh, I'm from LA too. What part?" And then they're like, "Oh, I'm really from." Like, no, like, say, where are you from? Where are you from? Like, just put me
Yeah,
onto your city, even if your city isn't well known. Like, put me onto your city. But best believe if one of y'all was from the Bay or from Oakland, y'all letting everybody in the room know. Everybody. Then all of a sudden it's a conversation. Oh, y'all really get hyphy like us. Y'all ain't got this like us. I'm like, all right, all right, all right. Y'all love the Bay. Cool, cool, cool. But not respect for Oakland and all our Oakland listeners for sure. Um, but coming from the Bay, let our listeners know how and when, if you remember, did we first cross paths?
yeah. So I transferred to UCSD in fall of 2022. And at that time, you were working at the BRC. Um, the BRC was huge for me because even when I toured back in May 2022, I toured after I already committed. Um, and so one of the stops my mom and I made, we departed from the tour and went to the BRC. Um, and yeah, from that day, the staff was so welcoming, and little did I know it was going to be such a huge part of my UCSD experience. Especially that first fall quarter.
Mm.
I did all my community college online, and so it was the first time I was going back to in-person classes since 2019. Um, and so um, obviously UCSD is such a big campus, and so having a place to go to at the BRC and be around um, people that just look like you and um, I had to stop feeling some of that imposter syndrome on
Hmm.
campus. It was definitely nice for me. And then meeting you specifically, I don't remember a day or anything, or
Yeah.
maybe even um, a specific conversation, but I do remember I noticed you had on the Air Max 95s because I have a pair of
Mm.
95s and I love Air Maxes. Um, and then I'm sure I saw you repping some Lakers gear.
Yeah, of course.
Um, and so yeah, I just remember I don't think I talked to you off the bat.
Mm.
I think for me, I can be talkative, but I'm a very like sit back and observe type of person. Um, yeah, but uh I just remember you being such like people loved you when they came to the BRC and showed mad love. And so I was like, oh, and also as a bearded person, I was like, damn, you got the full beard, everything. So I was like, this person might be cool, man. And yeah, although you always gave me shit about my Warriors, um,
That's called retention.
fair, fair. Yeah, you were always a positive person to be around. And I know the center was sad to see you go. Both staff and students. I got to work there for a short amount of time at the end of that school year, but yeah, I was always in there, and it's cool to see when you were back on campus my senior year. Um, and yeah, I forgot to let you know I've been a fan of the podcast. I remember last summer when I had moved back, I was going through RA training, and I listened to the episode with you and Kennedy.
Mm.
Um, that was really cool, and I was like, I'm trying to be on the podcast one day.
Hey,
So
and here we are. We made it to that day.
yes,
Um,
sir.
but no, I really appreciate that. If you started fall 2022, that means I only worked at the BRC for like 2 months and I was gone by the time
Yeah,
your quarter started. But no, I really receive and appreciate that. And I joked about the talking trash about the Warriors is called retention, but I think it kind of is when you really like highlight like just that whole experience of being black at a place like UCSD, in a place like La Jolla. Sometimes you just need that, especially as black men. I feel like we just need that familiarity of like, oh, this is a community I grew up in. I've heard people that sound like you before. Because I
yeah,
know in high school, when the Lakers would lose and I go in them high school hallways, everybody letting me have it. It's like, man, leave me alone. I'm just trying to go to chemistry class and y'all over here want to talk about what Derek Fisher did or did not do on the court. So when I worked at the BRC, like I like to recreate that type of barbershop feel with students and like really have that type of camaraderie because ain't nobody else in your classes really care about basketball the way we care about basketball. Like
yeah,
they don't watch the same game that we watch. They don't talk the same game that we talk. So I just love just being able to be in a space that is completely black, pro black, and just being able to like, hey, like Steph ain't had it against the Lakers. Like as soon as we beat y'all in the playoffs, you knew I was gonna be at the BRC that next day with a jersey on just to be
man,
there. Representation at
man.
its finest.
The funniest part about that is the last game I was watching at Dirty Birds
Hmm.
and had on my full this hoodie and I had on a Warriors hat and somebody that I didn't even know caught me on their Instagram story tripping, bro. Like I was like, man, I was like, bro, we should have made that. Like I was really like stomping around Dirty Birds, and somebody, one of my friends sent me their story. I was like, damn, somebody caught me lacking.
Hey man, that's what sports do to us, man. That's what sports do to us. But let's keep going with your journey at UCSD. So you transferred into UC San Diego. What did you major at?
I majored in psychology and minored in African American studies.
Okay. And so for our listeners, one of the things when I hear people talk about like the things that they study, I like our listeners to talk a little bit about like what that experience is like because for the folks who didn't go to college or who might not know what the value is in a psychology or African American studies minor program, why did you choose those for your studies or what did you gain out of those experiences in the classroom?
Yeah, so I'll go back a little bit to graduating high school and kind of my interests. I Well, first I took a gap year after high school, and I was working. I got an opportunity to travel, and I was supposed to be going on a 3-month wilderness course. Um, that got cut short by COVID, and then I was sitting at home for 2 weeks and like, all right, I need to do something. So I started online at De Anza College up here in the Bay, in April 2020, and I started as a global studies major. I was like interested. I've always been interested in people, but at that time I was kind of interested in like world affairs and politics. I think I did that for 2 quarters there, and then I had a couple homies that were already um like they had already completed their first year and um were psych majors. And so I decided to switch my major then. This is like 3 quarters in at De Anza. Um and I took my first psych class. It was just like an intro to psych. And it was really cool for me personally. I think psych has done a lot for me personally, just understanding myself. Um, I was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia like my senior year of high school. So like that's pretty late to
Mhm.
be diagnosed. And so that was a lot for me to figure out, which also kind of influenced me taking the gap year. And so I think it's something that I'm still trying to figure out to this day, like how does my brain work and how does that change how I interact with the world? Um, and so, yeah, psych has been great. I had one of my favorite classes from De Anza. It was called what was it? The Psychology of Wellness, and it was all about meditation. Like they had us keep a food log, a sleep log. I still have the book from that. That's like one of those like books. I didn't put my all into the class, which I regret,
Mhm.
but um, it was kind of hard to do that online. But the book
Yeah.
itself is one of the ones that I know I'm gonna be referring to like throughout my life. Um, and then transferring to UCSD, um, it was really interesting because the psych is such a growing major. And so our class, there isn't necessarily a psych building
Mhm.
in terms of being able to hold everybody for lecture. And so psych classes were kind of all over the place, like
Mhm.
just whatever lecture hall was available. Um, but for me, psychology at UCSD was I really enjoy the human side of psychology and understanding humans. I wasn't as focused on the like neuroscience
Mhm.
um side of it. Uh yeah, I say so more of the clinical side of psychology, which I learned from being at UCSD. And although I know it's very important, just reading so many psych research papers was just like, damn, bro, this is not.
They get a little
Uh,
dense for sure.
it does. But yeah, I really enjoyed my time in the psych department. I got to take really cool classes. One called, what was it called? Drugs, addiction, and mental disorders. One about impulse control disorders, um, human sexuality. Um, but my two favorite psych classes at UCSD were taught by Dr. Chapman. Shout out Dr. Chapman. Um, he was a big mentor for me. My only black psych professor that I had at UCSD. Um, and his classes, I took clinical psych with him and clinical assessment. Which clinical assessment was perfect to take my last quarter.
Hmm.
um, because it was largely like we focused a lot on ourselves. We did like career assessments, like it was called a self-directed search, um, a personality assessment. So it was like pretty cool to take senior year, and his work was practical. Um, like the in clinical psych, which I took fall quarter my senior year, it was the final project was to you had a case study and you had to diagnose them based on the criteria in the DSM, which was a really cool process because not only did you have to do that, you have to list what you ruled out. So it's a lot of going back and forth and like really trying to understand that criteria and get familiarized with it because a lot of it overlaps. And so that's where the rule outs become especially important. Um, and yeah, so that was really cool. And then the final project for clinical assessment was we had a movie character. Um, and we had to do a clinical intake for them, treat them as if they were our patient, and say if we were uh, like suggesting a diagnosis. I chose the Ray Charles movie,
Mm.
which was cool to see again and look at in an academic context. Um, yeah, so those were really beneficial classes for me and kind of showed me how much I wanted to be on the uh, clinical side of psych. Um, and then African American studies, actually at the what's it called the cookout the BRC does at the
The Black
beginning
Community
during
Cookout.
yes sir um my first week on campus, um Jasmine Henderson was out there promoting the African American Studies department.
Hmm.
Let me get their name right. Black Diaspora and African American Studies department. Um, but I didn't know how it was gonna fit into my schedule with transferring and already being kind of pressed to finish my units in the 2 years. Because I don't think financial aid was gonna cover me after that. So I was pretty focused on that. But winter quarter that first year, I decided to add that as did I don't even think I added it as a minor then, but I started taking classes. I took Dr. Child's class about prison, slavery, and
Hmm.
abolition. And that class, like I remember I signed up for that class on the first day of winter quarter. It was in Warren. I had never been to Warren. It was a night class. I was late, had a
Oh, you
whole
don't
bunch
want
of
to be late to
anxiety.
his classes.
Exactly. Like I was trying to find Warren Lecture Hall. I'm asking people and they were no help at all. Maps got me on the wrong side of the Price Center. I'm like, man, but yeah, that first day of class, I called my mom after and was like, "Mom, I might change
Mm.
my major to African American Studies." Um, just because of the in-depth analysis on our history and how it's so pertinent to today. And I think that was something that I've always been striving to seek out, especially after high school and then 2020 with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Um, like the aftermath of that and wanting to find my voice as a black man. Um, and I really enjoyed the way Dr. Child's class he was going to keep you on point. Like that was not a class where you could skim the readings at all.
Not at all.
And so it got me to engage with my education in a different way too, because I think my first quarter at UCSD was light in terms I was like, oh, if this is how it's gonna be, nah, bro. Like thinking back, I was only taking like a lower division biology class, one literature class, and one other class. I was only taking three academic classes, and then I did my transfer like 2 unit course. Um, I had all the free time in the world, and then winter quarter came, and that single class, on top of moving into upper division classes in psych, like really was like, all right, we got to be way more focused, and pay more attention to detail. Um, I love to hoop, and so fall quarter I was able to hoop for 3 hours if I wanted to.
Dang,
Now
three
it's like
hours. That's
maybe, yeah, I used to be outside at mirror courts like all night, like from like the lights didn't go off till 11:15. Um, but yeah, just reassess my priorities and how. I think I also fall quarter was different because I wasn't as social just coming to campus, and I met a lot more people going into winter quarter, going in the ABC conference. That really helped me. Um, and so as far as my major and my minor, I think they were very pertinent to me and who I am as a person. I've always been kind of that like listener friend in the friend group, and like people towards tend to gravitate towards like coming to me for advice or things like that. And I've been happy to be there for people. It's definitely as I reflect on middle school, high school, and college, like it's the people that have been there for me that helped me through it. So I've kind of leaned into that role. I was a peer counselor in high school, and so uh, that's why I told you, but I think before we started recording, but I'm applying to do my master's in social work now.
right.
Um, because once I changed to psychology, I was like, oh, I want to be a therapist, and it was last summer where I really started thinking about what does that mean. There, I think, are five different mental health professional licenses, and understanding what each of those would mean for like career opportunities. Um, Shout out another UCSD person, Danielle Simeon in
Mhm.
CAPS. Um, she took the time to meet with me last summer on Zoom, and like we did an informational interview. And it really gave me some clarity on the the LCSW licensed clinical social work route that I'm trying to go now. But at that time, I was debating like, do I do a marriage and family therapist program? What do I want to do? So yeah, it definitely gave me a lot of guidance there.
Yeah, and not to piggy or to continue on that sentiment that you just shared, thinking of like your identities and as you share like your identities being a black male, like why do you think it's important for someone like you to be a social worker or to work in that field?
It goes back to being raised in Oakland. Um, I think especially like post graduate. So I didn't go to middle school or high school in Oakland. I My mom um got me into a private school in the suburbs, not about 45 minutes away from here. Um, and it was a great experience, but it did, looking back and once I realized once I graduated high school is I was spending so much time over there. And um so it was interesting living like in Oakland and going to school there um with like one example is Danville, like they get their roads repaved for no reason. There wasn't a bump in the road, but like they were just
Just
repaving the
got
road.
money, just got money
Just
to
got
waste.
money. Meanwhile, I've lost three tires in Oakland to potholes, bro.
Yo, I used to have to go do recruitment in Oakland, and I'm not gonna lie, I used to be nervous going back to the rental car place. Some roads used to tear that rental car up.
Bro, like it is like uh not surprisingly, they have been repaving roads amidst gentrification, but roads that have been trashed for years, like everybody know you better know that road in the light. So when it's dark, you know when to do. Like, um, but yeah, growing up in Oakland, I've seen a lot, and there are a lot of people out here that need support. Um, and I think, um, yeah, graduating high school, I started running a lot, and so like actually being on foot around the streets
Hmm.
of Oakland and part of Berkeley, you just see a lot, and there's unfortunately a lot of homeless people. There's a lot of families struggling to make it, and so I think as someone who got the opportunity to go to the school that I went to for middle school and high school, which was a huge blessing. But also I felt not a pressure, but almost a duty to be able, like I always have wanted to give back to the communities that raised me. Um, because I've experienced a lot in my life that people just do not simply get the opportunity to do. And so, um, going to such, um, uh, I guess, rigorous school um, that I felt like prepared me for not just the academic classroom, because I wasn't the best student in high school. I also didn't know I had dyslexia and ADHD,
Yeah,
which would have been a
that's
big
fair.
help. Um, but I learned so much at that school outside of the classroom, and then also living my life in Oakland, while also viewing all they got going on in
Hmm.
Danville. Um, Once I decided to be a like that, I wanted to be a therapist. I didn't know how much of a variety that being a marriage and family therapist would give me. Like in my mind, it was like, all right, I'm gonna strictly be doing therapy if I go that route. But social work, I had the opportunities to work in schools, hospitals, like a whole bunch of different domains. But I can also have my private practice as a therapist on the side. So I think um, a large part of my decision to choose social work um, came from seeing the need of what people need around here and kind of maximizing what I can do with the gifts that I've been given.
Yeah, I really resonate a lot with a lot of what you said. I'm not even sure if you knew this, but I also went to private school. I went to a private Catholic school in like the South Bay area of LA, which is a suburban area. But also, like my grandparents lived in like the Inglewood area, so that same dichotomy of like, yeah, I'm going to school and I'm around these people who they talk about yachts and they mansions in the hills and whatnot, and then to go to the Inglewood side of things where it's like, oh, did you hear so and so got shot down the street? Or just the gentrification that's happening around us. All these different things that are at play at home. And when you go to school in an area that's so far and so different and differently resourced, it's just hyper, like you're hyper aware of those situations. Then I think you go to college at a place like UCSD, you take that class of Dr. Childs, and then all the light bulbs just go off in your head like, dang, like there's really like a lot of like academia under a lot of this. There's reasons behind a lot of this. There's systems at play in all of this. Because you're not the first person on this podcast to name that class as kind of that central like point in academia at UCSD where it's like, dang, that class really like changed my life. For some people, that's like a big extent. For some people, it's a smaller extent. But nevertheless, you walk out of that classroom, like you said on the first day, like, dang, is this what I need to be studying? Like this is interesting. This is matching who I am in my history. And I think it's so impactful for us to be able to share those stories so that people understand the importance of African American history, the importance of these programs. We unfortunately live in a society where people are banning books that teach about like some of the darker histories of our country, but it's like, nah, like it's important for our diverse peoples to be able to hear and learn those stories.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, want to get us a little bit out of the UCSD corner for a bit and talk a little bit about some of the traveling that you've done in your gap year and otherwise. Because as I was preparing for this episode, I was scrolling down your IG, then all of a sudden I seen pictures from the Kingdom of Tonga. I'm like, oh, you've been outside. Because like I know people who are Tongan. I've known people that come from all around the world, but I don't think I ever like seen people like take pictures traveling to a place like the Kingdom of Tonga. Or even like I didn't know you were skiing. I was like, he up here in the slopes. Like Derek out here just living life. So I wanted to talk to you on the podcast just about like some of these travel stories. Like where's been like some of your favorite moments traveling? What have you learned about yourself traveling? Wherever you want to start, but just what was it like to get out there in the world and especially these parts of the world that not a lot of people get to travel to?
Yeah. Um, well, first of all, I have to shout out my mom before anything because she has really made it possible for me to live a life where, although we might not have much monetarily as a family, I'm able to maximize my resources by being one, courageous enough to apply for them, apply for opportunities when they come around, but also um, understand where you will have to sacrifice to be able to live the life that you want to live. Um, so yeah, shout out moms. I was very, very fortunate to be at the school that I was at, um, because they provided so many travel opportunities. It's weird to talk about sometimes because it's just like, yeah, I lived like, if I really think about it, I went to more countries before the age of 18 than like most, like the vast majority of the world has ever gone to. And so, I do always remember to be grateful for those experiences because I think at that school it was such a norm for people. Like people's families were traveling like nothing. Like I think in sixth grade there was a debate going on amongst some of my classmates about which was the best hotel in Maui. Like what? What? You're in sixth grade. Like,
I don't even know how many
uh,
hotels I'd been in sixth grade, let alone in
like,
Maui.
bro, for real. Um, but yeah, so my first international trip ever was to Costa Rica in seventh grade. Um, that trip was so amazing for me because had I been on a plane at that point? Um, I don't think I'd been on a plane at that point. Maybe I flew once to LA when I was like young, but I don't, and I'd only been outside of the state of California once to visit family in Louisiana. And so, um, Costa Rica, the school had opportunities to travel during what they called interim. Uh, Basically, it was like a 3-day period before spring break, and it led into spring break. So if you chose to do one of the international trips, you're there for the 3 days and then your spring break. And they were all supposed to be like learning, um, academic focused. And so that one was it was really cool. We got to stay up in kind of a mountainous, jungly region of Costa Rica in a place called Palmichal. Um, and we got to go to coffee farms and they were growing a lot of sugar cane. Got to learn about those processes. And we got to spend time with like a local youth soccer team, which was awesome. funny enough, I took French, so I like did not speak any Spanish.
I took French
Um,
also. That's crazy.
that's funny. Uh, but I highlight that one because it was the first time where I can remember like really imagining life outside of the United States.
Mm.
Um, um, yeah, and as I reflect on some of the early trips that I went on, it's like I want to go back to these places because I wasn't able to fully appreciate them. I don't think any 13-year-old can really appreciate a trip to Costa Rica. My mom was mad at me because I came back with so many selfies and not enough like pictures of the of what we were doing. Um, which as a photographer now, like I'm like, yeah, like I can't believe like it's a ridiculous number of just like selfies with the homies. Um, but another trip that I'd like to highlight was I went on I did an exchange um to South Africa um the summer after my sophomore year of high school. That was the most time I spent in another country, and so it'll always have a special place in my heart. And
How
then
long were you there?
I was there for 6 weeks.
Okay.
Um, and so I think that experience was amazing because not only was I there, it wasn't just a trip where I was with the school group. Like I was staying in the dorms at the school that I went to. And the my host, um, his family lived not too far away, like maybe an hour and a half away from the school, so we could go home on the weekends and do other stuff in the country. Um, but being there, it was amazing. The school I was at was in the rugby like provincial championship at the time, and so there was like a lot of school spirit. Um, Beautiful campus. It was called Stanford Lake College, and they had a big lake at the bottom of their campus. Um,
You said it was called Stanford Lake?
Stanford Lake College, yep. Um, and but the thing I really appreciated about that trip was that the family I was with um was a black family, and the dad was a pretty successful lawyer, but which afforded them a pretty decent life in South Africa. But he also took me back to the townships where he was raised, and we visited my host's grandmother who was still living there. And it's just like, damn, this looked like East Oakland. Like,
Mm.
it's crazy. Like, it was wild. And to start to understand um, the racial dynamics there. Obviously, my mom, like to me, obviously to me, my mom being who she is, she had me researching Nelson Mandela before I even went. Um, and so I knew, I guess, from like a reading standpoint, what had been going on in the country, but to still to be able to see firsthand the disparities, especially being at that country in a school that was similar to my school back here, um, and then also being able to view um, the other people's realities. Um, it was very, and I was what? I was a little bit older. I was 15 at that point, or no, 16. Yeah, summer 2017, I was 16. And so I understood a lot more. I had just taken US history that year in school. Um, and so I was developing a bit more of a worldview and could actually have critical thoughts about what's going on around me. And so that was a really um, beneficial experience for my personal growth. Um, and then also being able to have the father who was a lawyer and could really speak to everything he's seen in his life, um, was awesome. And then the last trip I'll highlight, what you brought up was Tonga, 2019. This was like a trip that was especially meaningful to me because it was the first one that I could pay for myself.
Mm.
Um, I graduated in June 2019, and then that summer I was working like 40, sometimes 50 hours a week, just grinding. Um, and I was close with the family from my school, am still close to this day. And they were teachers at the school I went to, and they took a sabbatical to go to Tonga. Um, and so I had a place to stay when I went over there. Um, and yeah, like I said, I worked that summer and was able to actually pay for my airfare, which was a huge step for me. Um, because a lot of people think, like going on all the school trips that I went on, that the school was paying for them, but no, my mom was busting her ass to,
Mhm.
which really meant the world to me because um it was just like, Mom, but I went last year. She's like, no, just apply, just apply. And she made a lot of sacrifices um in her life for me to be able to see the world. Like she hasn't traveled outside of the country since I was born, which she had done several
Oh
times
wow.
before I was born. But she's paid for me to see the world. And she likes to say that she lives vicariously through me, but we got a plan in the books to go somewhere next summer where I hopefully I know I'll be able to pay my half, but I'm hoping to be able to sponsor the whole trip. Um, but yeah, Tonga was amazing, bro. Like it's different going to European countries where you're not, where brown people are not the dominant, or like when you just look around, you don't necessarily see a whole bunch of brown people. But some people were asking me if I was Tongan just because we have similar skin tones
Yeah.
and um, we're all like I'm big just like a lot of them are. But it was awesome. They have such a relaxed culture there and it's so familial, um, so family oriented. Um, so they have a huge sports culture with rugby and uh, soccer, but I also play basketball there. Um, and then another side of it is there's a lot of poverty in Tonga, but the thing that's drastically different between there and where I live here in Oakland is I didn't see a lot of homeless people, if any. I say not a lot, but I don't think I saw any homeless people
Right.
because of how communal their their that the people are in Tonga. And so yeah, it was a really heartwarming experience for me because again, I was like amongst the locals. Um and um I got to like spend a bunch of time with the kids that I babysat in middle school and high school and their family. Um and yeah, so that was a really great experience for me. Another highlight is that to get to Tonga, you can only fly through Australia, New
Right.
Zealand, or Fiji. I flew through Fiji and I was able to stay there for a couple of days on my way back, which was amazing. But yeah, I've been very, very, very blessed to be able to travel and also be able to like understand the importance of reflecting on those experiences and um, using them to inform myself when I think about people, the way people interact, the way um, like different people's backgrounds um, and family situations affect their upbringing. So yeah, I'm very blessed, man.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell that you're very. I mean, I already have seen a lot of this in you, but of course, it's the most extended conversation we've had, and I can definitely see a lot of that, that reflection, a lot of gratitude. Like, I think you haven't gone more than like 2, 3 minutes without being grateful for just the opportunities that your mom blessed you with, and just the life you have been able to experience. Uh, I might know the answer to this question, but are you a writer?
Um, I'm gonna say no because I have a lot of
That's
respect for
that's a
y'all.
yes.
I'm gonna say no because I have a lot of respect for the people that are actually out there writing for real.
But that's what
I
makes you a
do.
writer right there. I feel like only a writer would even think that step ahead to say all of that and do that thing. So I'm gonna say the answer is
uh,
yes, but go ahead and continue with your no.
I say that because I haven't gotten into writing as much as I aspire to do. Um, but I do enjoy writing. I think it's the best way for me to be able to convey my thoughts. I was always better at essay writing than like math tests or science tests. Um, and community college actually was the first time I had to like really well actually that's a lot. That's a lot. In middle school they had us do like an eighth grade speech on something we were passionate about. And so that was some time where I was writing about myself. But I took a writing class in community college that was explored different types of writings or writing. And part of it was to write the beginning of your memoir. Um, which was a really cool experience to me to be able to reflect. And actually, I got to go back and look at that at some point. But
Yeah, you definitely have to look at that. And I'm curious, do you remember what you wrote about for your eighth grade speech? What was you passionate about at eighth grade?
yeah, um, it was a camp called Camp Kesson. They have it on UC San Diego campus as well. But it's a camp for kids whose parents have or have been affected by cancer. My mom is a two-time breast cancer survivor. Um, and I went to Camp Kesson as a kid, Camp Kesson Berkeley, for 8 summers and then had the privilege of being able to be a counselor when I was at UCSD.
Okay.
And so that was awesome. My eighth grade speech was at 8:10 in the morning on a Friday in January. Um, and like four of my counselors came to my speech, which Danville's like 45 minutes away from Berkeley. And it was winter break for them and they're students at Berkeley. So now thinking about that as just graduating college, like that's a lot. Yeah, I've gotten different experiences through school, but I haven't written too much outside of school, and that's why I don't necessarily call myself a writer. Um, although I really do enjoy writing now that I think about it. But I took like a poetry class in high school, which was really cool, and writing the paper for Dr. Child's class was really um, a good experience for me. And right now, I'm doing my college apps and or my grad school apps, so I'm writing a lot about myself. And so, yeah, I do really value writing and how I'm able to gather my thoughts and really, I think I mentioned before, I'm kind of a sit back and observe type of person.
Hmm.
And I feel like I have a pretty analytical mind. And so I'm always thinking about things. And so writing is definitely nice to be able to um, process those thoughts and uh, yeah, kind of articulate what I'm trying to express.
Well, on behalf of the writers listening to this podcast, congratulations, you are a writer. Because if you ask any writer if they're a writer, they will usually pause, reflect back on if they deserve the title of writer, and then they're analytical about the words they're even using to describe themselves as a writer. You, my friend, are a writer because we all wish we were writing more. Like even like with this podcast, this is the first episode I recorded in like over a couple months. And I'm like, damn, I really need to do that more. Am I not a podcaster though? Because I'm not a I'm a podcaster. So yeah, you're a
Yeah.
writer. Welcome to the Writers Club.
For sure. Appreciate it.
The one more thing I want to make sure that we have space to talk about before we get to kind of the rapid fire round. You mentioned photography and like taking photos being something that you enjoy. What started that journey for you as a photographer?
Um, Sophomore year of high school, shout out Adam Thorman, my photography teacher. Um, he was a huge mentor and still is a huge mentor for me because at the time, um, like at the beginning of the school year, I wanted to take photography, didn't have a camera. Um, he let me borrow one of the cameras that he had to start the class in winter break. Was it? It was either around Christmas or Black Friday. I found this bundle and I was like, "Ma, like please, like." And she was like, "Yeah." I think she said it was gonna be my Christmas and birthday present. So I was like, "I don't care, like perfect. Like this is all I can ask for." Where is my camera? It's right here. I have the same camera that I've had since 2016. It's a Nikon D5500 DSLR camera. Um, and outside of taking photography in school, which was awesome, I have also been, it connects back to my traveling stories. And I really appreciate Adam for helping me get into photography because while experiencing um, all these amazing places, I get to on trips that I think can be like rapid pace. I get to take a moment and pause and look back and see the shot that I want. Like it's to the point now where a lot of times I can see the shot that I want before I
Mhm.
even take out my camera. And so, um, yeah, I really appreciate getting to add that to like kind of my analytical mind. And it has definitely helped me or well shaped how I view the world. No pun intended. Um,
See, that's the writer in you.
but yeah, one of one of my favorite projects that I did was actually my junior year. I took advanced photo with Adam, and I forget the assignment itself, but we were supposed to do like a year long project. Um, and what I did was going around Oakland, taking pictures of different street art, whether that be murals, graffiti, and really getting to challenge that narrative of what is considered art because Oakland loves to paint over stuff. They love to put a building up where there was a beautiful mural. Like I feel so blessed because during that project, what- which was like 2018, um, I took a lot of pictures and a lot of that stuff is gone now. So it's like literally Oakland history. Like there's this one building downtown that had this huge mural, probably like 50, 60 feet tall, the mural itself. And then they put a skyscraper right next to the building. So the mural's still there, but there's a building right
Mhm.
here, so nobody can see it.
Dang.
Um, but yeah, it's really photography has been great for me. It's also something that I don't do enough anymore, but definitely gives me an appreciation for the world around me. And also another one of my um, favorite activities is backpacking. And so I've been like in some of the most remote wilderness areas, and had the privilege of capturing my own photos in some of these spots. So um, yeah, I love to take pictures. Um, yeah,
See, we're gonna have to go out somewhere and have a nature documentary or something. You got my business brain working now. Since you out there in the
man,
wilderness taking pictures and stuff, we gotta put that out there. But no, that's dope. Like I think And going back to just some of the kind of impetus of the podcast, like these are the stories that I'm really most interested in because obviously we mentioned at the beginning of the episode about crossing paths at the BRC and like me stopping by the BRC from time to time, and we would talk about the Warriors and we would joke around, and I would get to like slowly know you at like a surface level of who you are as a student and a person, but to be able to sit here for over an hour and just get to know and unpack the different facets of your life that you might see on an Instagram post or might hear about. Because I would have never known that you would just be out here backpacking. It sounds terrifying to me. I'm not even going to lie to you. Just to be out in the wilderness, sort of like backpacking. But I'm sure that as a photographer, as an analytical person, as a well-traveled person, that there's magic to be found when you're out there in those remote areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, no. First of all, I do really appreciate being able to be on this podcast. I was talking to one of my homies yesterday about how fast-paced life is, and
Mm.
getting the time to just sit down and talk and reflect on certain experiences is amazing. And as far as nature goes, like there's really something beautiful about untamed nature, and I feel really blessed to live in the Bay because we have a lot of like regional parks and parks with a lot of protected land, but there's something different about the untamed, just letting Mother Nature do what she do. Because I mean, I'm drinking some of the freshest water like ever. Um, Swam in alpine lakes that literally shocked my whole system. I jumped into one and like it literally felt like my whole body reset. Like
Mm.
it was crazy. Um, but again, I'm very fortunate to get these experiences. I had a couple of the backpacking experiences through Boy Scouts. Um, and then at my school in high school, you're required to go on a backpacking trip. Um, and so like I don't know, my life would be very different if I didn't have that time to do those trips, especially because we are so like our society is now so technology heavy, and just getting to actually physically and mentally experience what it's like being disconnected, um, and getting to really breathe in fresh air, not in the car smog and um
Yeah, I grew up in LA. You don't gotta tell me nothing about car smog.
yeah, no, you get it, you get it. I joke it now that like the Bay is becoming like LA in terms of traffic. Like, man, like random Tuesday at 2 o'clock, it's already packed. Like, it's like, all right, man. Um, but yeah, like I've really um enjoyed those experiences. To They always serve as like kind of a reset to
Yeah.
me. I'm hoping to go on a couple backpacking trips next year with my school. I've actually been back as an instructor one time on the course that I went on as a student. Um, so yeah,
No, that's awesome, man. And I'm just happy just to hear that you've had this experience. Like, I think that it's just really dope to know that there's black people out here just really living life in whatever way that they find joy or they find peace in. Because I think that there's always like, oh, people should be doing this, people should be doing this, or black people do this, black people don't do this. And so it's just cool. It's when like I'm able to talk to people in my community and they're sharing these experiences that you might be the only person I know that's doing all this, but it's dope that someone's out there doing it and just having a great time doing it. So yeah, just really excited to just see what more journeys you go on because like you say, you just graduated from undergrad, you're applying to master's programs, and you just have so much more life to be able to experience. And I can't imagine what you'll be able to like reach to and experience now that you're like in this next phase of young adulthood. So looking forward to hearing more about the story, man.
yeah, I appreciate it. Um, just the final thing I'll say about that is it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about wanting to give back. Because yeah, not many black boys from Oakland go backpacking. Like, um, I'm very appreciative to have those experiences. But as you talk about the next steps for my life, like I'm in a position where I've been able to go on a trip, um, get my wilderness first responder, which is like the certification you need to be able to lead these kind of backpacking trips. Um, get that, and actually, I just renewed it this school year, this past school year. I went over to Joshua Tree and renewed that. Um, and so you talked about like a business mind, um, your business mind and having ideas. Yeah, I definitely want to. I know there are programs out there that look to get quote unquote inner city youth out into nature. Um, but it would be dope to either join one of those or start my own. Um,
Hey,
and
start
be able
your
to,
own for the students, for the people of East Oakland. I think that'll
man,
mean the world.
it would. Absolutely, absolutely. And so, yeah, that's one thing that I've thought about. Um, and so it is on the bucket list for sure.
That's awesome, man. And I think that's kind of a good segue to kind of the tail end of the podcast, or not kind of the tail end, the tail end of the podcast. Just because one of the questions that I'm adding to my rotational questions this season of the Banquet Hall, what's the most important thing that you want to be a part of your legacy? Whether it's something that you want to accomplish or just something that you want to make sure that is able to be said about you when it's all said and done.
When it's all said and done, I hope people can remember me as someone who really tried to show up for the people around him. Um, yeah, like I've definitely, although I've shared a lot of positive experience on the podcast, like I've been through a lot in my life. My family has been through a lot, and without the support of other family members, of friends, and my mom is still like she still has some of her high school friends. But without the support of other people, I would not be where I am today. And so I really hope people can remember that as part of my legacy. And I know what you were talking about, forging my own path. Like my family jokes that, yeah, they definitely would never want to be in the wilderness like that. Bugs this, bug that. But I am appreciative to have those opportunities to actually do it and get out, but realize the value in it and realize um, what we're missing out on. Like, I think a bunch of indigenous cultures across the world can speak to the the benefit of having a relationship to the land that you're living on, and it's an exhilarating experience to know that all you got is this backpack with the gear that you have in it and the people that you're with in a group, and knowing that you're still going to be all good. Like I had all the stuff I needed to keep me warm and keep me fed for 2 weeks or however long I'm gone. Like, and so um, there's a beauty to life when like the most you have to worry about is, all right, where am I going to make camp next, or what meal am I cooking next? Um, is my water purified the way we're supposed to do it? But other than that, it's just about being in community. Um, I want to be remembered as somebody that loved being in community, whatever that be, whatever that mean in the moment. But yeah, um, mostly as somebody that showed up for his people um, and live life to not by anybody else's standards. Although it's hard, that is a very idealized version of
Yeah.
my life, but I really do strive for that.
No, I think that's beautifully stated. And I think you kind of hit some of the questions I was going to ask within that answer. So, manifesting that for you through this podcast, that I'm sure a lot of people are already saying that about you. When people hear this, they'll be like, you're well on your pathway to being there. But I think it's good when we are able to just sit and verbalize these things and say like what our whys are, just to make sure that we continue heading towards our North Star. And so, just a couple quick last questions before we wrap it up for the day. One, want to make sure we take a trip to shout out Shameless Plug Corner. I know throughout the episode you've mentioned your mom as someone who's been a big light in your life and just providing you with so much amazing opportunity. So just wanted to give you space if there's anything else you want to say for her or just any other people, entities you want to shout out, shameless plug, manifest. Now's your time to have the mic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love my mom. It's just been me and her for uh my whole life basically. But I really do appreciate like even getting to experience um what it's like living in a single parent household, but with an extraordinary parent. Like I never felt like I was missing out because of all that she brings to the table and the way she shows up for me and shows up for the rest of our family. Um, and my mom's one person that like she's so resourceful. And so as I'm working on my resume, as I'm working on these apps, as I'm researching different programs, she's always sending me information. Like even when I'm not even thinking about it, I just got done hooping. I was not planning to do no work tonight. She's sending me a link. Did you see this info session? Like, and I appreciate that, man. Like I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten to um, understand like how harsh this world can be, and that doesn't. She has shown me that that doesn't have to change the way that you approach life, that you um, show up for yourself and for other people. So yeah, definitely shout out my mom. Um, I think one thing we shared as an experience at UCSD is being a part of BSU. Um, I really that was definitely a highlight of my senior year, being on board and getting to meet all the people that comes with that and going to ABC conference. So that's definitely a highlight of my UCSD experience. For me, I don't really have anything to plug. I have not. Something I said I've been gonna do for a long time is start my photography Instagram, which I'll have some time after I'm done with these grad school applications. So I hope to get that done. But if anybody wants to follow me on my like personal Instagram account, is town biz underscore DP. Um, yeah. For those that don't know, Oakland is referred to as the town, whereas San Francisco is the city. And so Town Biz is a movement, a lifestyle all about being true to the roots of Oakland. Like I mentioned earlier, the Black Panther Party is I do take a lot of guidance from them and how they showed up for the community and kind of paved their own path. Um, and any other shout outs? Um, Shout out my Warriors, of course.
I'm
NBA
cutting
season
that
about to
out.
start. Oh, uh, uh, before I forget, who do you got in the WNBA championship?
Oh, that's happening in a few hours. I'm going with the
Yeah.
Liberty. I think
Okay.
Sabrina wants it. Not that nobody else on the links don't, but I think Sabrina won it. Her face after she made that 3 point
That
shot to
three
win the
was,
game. Ugh.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think so. I think the Liberty got it. So I'm going for New York, especially because if I'm not mistaken, it's at Madison Square Garden too. I think. Um, Yeah, I just think New York deserved him a championship. Only in basketball though, because Dodgers goes to the World Series. I need us to beat New York ass. So uh,
Yeah,
they can take the
yeah, I
liberty,
feel
but we'll
that
take baseball. Um,
for sure, for sure. Um, yeah, I think I'll go with the Liberty too. Sabrina, Bay Area native. She's from Walnut Creek, which is about 15-20 minutes from me. Um, and the admiration she has for Steph, it was just meant to be. It was meant to be. So shout out to them. I'm excited for the Valkyries to come to the Bay.
y'all need it, and
Uh,
y'all gonna love y'all. The Valkyries color scheme is cold too. I love it.
bro,
It's
purple's my favorite
cold.
color. Like, oh man, yeah. Um, but yeah, um, shout out Oakland, California, man. Um, it's a beautiful day out here. I'm probably gonna walk around before I head down to San Diego. But yeah, I think that's all the shout outs I got.
Alrighty, and then last but not least, takeaway corner. So, takeaways, lesson learned. What are you taking away from this episode for you, and what do you what do you hope that our listeners are taking away with them from hearing your story on this episode?
Yeah, I think something I learned about or for myself is um I need to get back into writing and photography more because I do feel like I am the best version of myself when I'm doing both of those things. Um, and I think both of those things help me reflect on my life and appreciate moments because they, like, as you know, they come and pass. And like memory is a funny thing that I learned about in psychology, but um, it might not always be there. So, like, documenting through photography, through writing, um, is definitely a goal of mine. Um, for listeners, I would say, um, no matter where you are, whether you're a student right now, whether um, you recently graduated, whether no matter where you are in life, those two positions are particularly pertinent to me. But um, to remember to one, find joy in life. I know life can become either mundane or overbearing, which it definitely has been for me at times. But yeah, take the time to find the things that give you joy. Any day that I could play basketball is a great day. Um, any day that I get to talk to a loved one is a great day. So yeah, take the time to cherish those moments and memories and be present as much as you can. Um, and show love to the people around you. Um, like I'm definitely not one to give like wait till somebody passes away to give them their flowers. I'm always telling people how much I appreciate them because yeah, like I think life the best thing about life is like interpersonal relationships and um how they progress over time. So yeah.
Wonderfully stated. Definitely echo your sentiments about making room for joy and finding joy in life, giving flowers, connecting with people, and just honoring our capacities in whatever capacity they exist in. Like sometimes, like checking in with somebody, maybe you only have time for a 2 minute phone call, but that 2 minute phone call can mean the world for a person. So I definitely resonate with that. And I think the additional takeaway I would add from my perspective, there's a whole lot of world out there. And the more of it that we're able to make sense of and experience for ourselves, the bigger our capacities to find joy in life. And so for the listeners, I encourage y'all to just figure out somewhere new that you can go. It doesn't have to be a new country. It could be your own backyard, but just find somewhere new to go and just sit and be present somewhere, whether it's at a park that you haven't been to. Maybe there's a mall that you've been meaning to check out. Maybe there's a country you want to go to that you don't know much about. But I encourage all the listeners to just think of somewhere new that you can experience and just make room for those experiences in life. Because I think, especially as someone who's in a transitional phase of life, like I just moved to a new city, a new job, new institution, after being at UCSD all my life, well, all my adult life as a college student and beyond. Um, so there's a lot of new in my life right now, and I'm just making sure that I take the time to be present in that newness. Because as you alluded to earlier in the episode, with technology, with capitalism, the world moves so fast, and sometimes we take for granted these moments. And so I want to close the podcast out by just extending flowers to you and thanking you for one, being a listener of the podcast, two, being interested in being on the podcast, and three, making the time to be on the podcast. Because although, of course, you're telling your story and this is about you, I definitely don't take it for granted that you feel comfortable being on this platform to share about yourself and to open up. And it's just always, it warms my heart, especially when I have another Black male on the podcast, especially someone younger than me, because I just think through like all the influences that we can have on each other in community when we take the time to connect, when we take the time to affirm, when we take the time to just make space for each other's stories. So, Derek, absolutely appreciate you. And I'll turn it over to you for the last words before we close out the recording.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate you for having me here. And I think when you sent me the doc of questions, like I was honored because it is so thoughtful and laid out, and um, it does give the the podcast guests the space to express themselves in whatever way they see fit. It's not necessarily a linear process, and I think it's super dope what you're doing. It was a couple years ago. I was thinking about having my own podcast. I used to like I think 2020, 2021. Like had really stopped listening to a lot of music and be listening to podcasts a lot.
So,
Um, and so it's interesting to have that this platform has um, opened itself up and given people a new avenue to express themselves. Um, there are a whole range of podcasts, good and bad, but I do really enjoy the guests that you have on here, and honored to be a part of the Banquet Hall podcast.
absolutely. Welcome to the Banquet Hall of Fame, as I would like to start saying. Um, Listeners, as always, we gave y'all 5-star content. Make sure you leave us a 5-star rating. If this is your first time checking out the Banquet Hall, make sure you follow on social media at Banquet Hall Pod. Also, you can go to thefourthkyler.com to check out some of the older podcasts. Plenty of amazing stories. A lot of people that went to school with Derek and I, or graduated UCSD with one of us. So check out another story. If you were just here for Derek, stick around for one or two more. Never know what you might find at the Banquet Hall. But Derek, thank you for your time. Listeners, thank you for your time. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Go Dodgers, go Lakers, and we don't care about that team in the Bay Area. So I'm going to end the
I do.
recording.
All right,
uh,
appreciate you, man.
yes, sir.